All right, I'm going to continue just briefly. Well, I don't know how brief this is going to be, but this is going to be a continuation of my talk from yesterday that got cut off because my phone overheated. And maybe it overheated for a reason. Maybe I needed to continue today. I needed to think some things through a little bit more. One thing I was saying yesterday, I was getting onto the problem of suffering, and I was saying that the Course presents an answer to the problem of suffering. And the answer is very simple, but it's not an easy answer. It's a crazy answer, actually. And the Course's answer is that suffering does not exist because the world does not exist. That's basically the answer. The world is an illusion. The world as we know of it, when we think of the world and we think of how unfair this is and how could God create a world in which there's so much suffering and so much horrible, tragic events that go on, on every day, every moment of the day, even at this very moment in a world of how many, 8 billion plus people and however many species of animals. But let's just talk about the people. There's so many horrible things happening at any given moment. There are so many inequalities in life, so much seeming unfairness, people dividing each other. And if you look at like politics in the United States, for example, it's always been this way, but it seems to be worse right now, right? In terms of the divided nature and the bickering. And for example, I'll give you one thing. I'm not. This is not a judgment when I say this. By the way, this is just kind of like the way things go. Trump gets almost assassinated, and for a very short time he kind of does change, right? And then he gets a few days later or a week later, we're back. We're back. Of course, it wasn't going to stay that way, right? Because politics is a dirty game, and you have to lie and cheat and make the other side look as bad as possible. You have to demonize your opponents, and that's the way it works. It's if you can see it as the game that it is, I don't really want any part of it myself, but because I wouldn't want to have to lie that much, But it seems that that's what people think that they have to do in order to be in power, and that's indicative of what this world is about. That just shows you, written in large, what is going on in life. Is that people feel that they need to do whatever they need to do in order to maintain their life in the world. And, I think Jesus in the Course is saying you don't have to, actually. You can opt out. There is an alternative. You don't have to play those games if you don't want. I am under no laws but God's, right? So I was talking, so the answer to the problem of suffering is a very simple one. The world only God is real. Only love is real, or you could say only the love of God is real. Nothing else even exists. Everything else is part of this illusion to hide the fact of the love of God. Because somehow, for whatever reason, at some point or another, the love of God was not enough, which in itself is crazy idea, right? How could the love of God not be enough? That's why the Course, don't take that literally true, actually. That itself could be a metaphor, that Jesus is speaking metaphorically about something we can't understand. And maybe we'll never understand it. or maybe you have to be back in the love of God to fully understand it, right? But and that's going to segue to the next thing that I was talking about yesterday. The other thing was what Jesus says in the beginning, in the preface. He says the curriculum the course proposes is carefully conceived and is explained step by step at both the theoretical and practical levels. It emphasizes application rather than theory. That means practice rather than theory, and experience rather than theology. It specifically states that, quote, a universal theology is impossible, but a universal experience is not only possible, but necessary. What does a universal experience mean? It means that everyone can have this experience, and it's the same experience. Ultimately, it's the same experience. It might not be the same on the level of form. For example, I'm going to talk about Krishna today. So if you're a Hindu and you believe that Krishna is the supreme personality of the Godhead, or something like that, right? You may experience Krishna in form, but you also may go beyond that to just the pure love of God, the abstract love of God. That's really, I think, the experience the Course is pointing at, which is getting beyond all the forms. And that's true for any person of any religion or no religion, is to have that experience of the perfect love, which is not personal. It is not from a person, like a supreme person or a supreme being. It's maybe more from a supreme beingness, but not supreme being, right? Not a supreme person, but a supreme beingness. Like there's this abstract, loved in the abstract. So that would be the universal experience that is available to each and every being, right? Each and every person, each and every being. That's why this is not a religion. Of Course in Miracles is not a religion. It's not a cult. It's not a philosophy per se. You could say it's a thought system, or you could just say it's one guide of many to your true self, or it's one guide of many to that universal experience of love. Not the only one. Okay, so although Christian in statement, the Course deals with universal spiritual themes. So on the surface, on the level of form, you pick up A Course in Miracles and it seems Christian. And I've given the Course to people. I'm thinking of one person in particular. I gave it to him, and he didn't want to continue because it looked too Christian to him. He got turned off. And I tried to say to him, it looks Christian on the surface, but that's only on the level of form, it's Christian, but it's really getting at something universal, right? It's speaking of universal spiritual truths that goes beyond any one religion. In fact, every religion has their esoteric branches. For example, Judaism has Kabbalah, Islam has Sufism, there are the Christian mystics, there are the Hindu yogis. These are all like the esoteric branches of these religions. And if you look at the mystics of the different religions, they all are really looking very similar in terms of what they're doing and what they're talking about. Okay, so it emphasizes that it is but one version of the universal curriculum. So it uses the word universal 3 times there, right? Universal experience, universal spiritual themes, universal curriculum. There are many others, this one differing from them only in form. They all lead to God in the end. So this is a beautiful statement. This is just to say, this is not the only way, right? This course is not the only way to God. This is one way. And it might work for some people. It might not work for a lot of people. In fact, the funny thing, before the Course became the phenomenon that it became, and it is a phenomenon, Helen, Bill, and Ken, they didn't know how big it was going to be. They knew they were onto something there. They knew that they had something mind-blowing, earth-shattering, but they didn't know what impact it was really going to have. They didn't know it was going to, millions of copies were going to be sold in Ken's lifetime. Ken died, I believe, in 2012 or 11, 13. I don't know. I forget exactly when. But by the time he passed, the Course had been translated into like 25 languages, millions of copies sold out there, circulating. It became a huge thing, but they didn't know how big it was going to be. And early on, Helen, Ken quotes Helen as saying, 5 or 6 people are really gonna. There's 5 or 6 people that are really gonna get this. This is gonna be helpful. It might, other people are gonna do the Course, but 5 or 6 people maybe are really gonna go all the way with this, and they're really gonna they're really gonna get it. And I think Ken was kind of the view that yes, the Course will be popularized, the Course will be out there, many people will do the Course, but will they really engage with it? Will they really go all the way with it? Will they really try to get at really understand what it's getting at and really go all the way with it? And I think that's an important question, I think, to ask. That's not it might sound elitist, but it's not really. It's like anything in life, is that, why do certain people become, get to where they get to? Because they are driven, and they do the work. They put the work in. So what I want to talk about in addition to that is the Course presents itself. Jesus, first of all, does not say in the preface, he does not mention the name Jesus. So let's talk about that for a moment. And the name Jesus is actually not used much throughout the Course at all. It really is used, I think, maybe a couple times in the text. But other than that, the only time it's really used is in the manual, where it talks about, Christ. Doesn't even say Jesus, does it? Well, it says Jesus dash Christ. So that's in the clarification of terms. And it talks about Jesus in the third person. It doesn't talk about Jesus. Jesus is not talking about himself in the first person there. The problem with talking about Jesus is that we think of Jesus as a man or a person who had this special line to God, and we kind of idolize him. We kind of make him something outside of ourselves, something that, when we think of Jesus in Christian terms, and the word Christian, there's nothing wrong with that term. Christian just means a follower of Christ. So in a sense, A Course in Miracles is Christian in a sense, in that sense, in the sense that this course is certainly bringing Jesus and Christ into the picture, and is definitely hearkening back to the Gospels. And a Christian is a follower of Christ, and A Course in Miracles is talking about Christ all over the place, and it's talking about the Holy Spirit, and it's using things that Jesus said in the King James version of the New Testament primarily, but it also quotes Paul and some of the other epistles and some of the other writings in the New Testament. So So it is Christian in statement, as Jesus says. So he says, although it is Christian in statement, it's really getting at universal themes. And it's also coming to correct some of the mistakes of Christianity. So let me read you a part. This is in chapter 6, the lessons of love. Jesus says, I'm going to just read this one part and we'll talk about it, and then that'll be it for this video. Teach only love, for that is what you are. Okay. The message of the crucifixion is perfectly clear. Teach only love, for that is what you are. If you interpret the crucifixion in any other way, you are using it as a weapon for assault rather than as the call for peace which it was intended. The apostles often misunderstood it, and for the same reason that anyone misunderstands it. Their own imperfect love made them vulnerable to projection, and out of their own fear, they spoke of the, quote, wrath of God, unquote, as his retaliatory weapon. Nor could they speak of the crucifixion entirely without anger, because their sense of guilt had made them angry. So the apostles did not understand the crucifixion. According to what Jesus is saying, and I'm not going to read the whole section, but I'm just going to kind of give a synopsis. Jesus is saying when he was crucified, he felt only love. He did not suffer. He did not undergo pain and suffering. He did not have a passion, so to speak. He did not suffer. Some of the Gospels, I think Mark has Jesus saying, my God, why have you forsaken me? But that's not in Luke, I don't believe. It might be in Matthew, but it's not in Luke. So not all the Gospel writers wanted that in there. We're not going to go into a whole discussion of that, but my God, why have you forsaken me suggests that Jesus was suffering. But Jesus, in the course, is saying, I did not suffer. I felt only love. I knew, because I know what's real. This world is a complete illusion, and I had only love and forgiveness. That's all. I did not have any anger, any upset, any lack of forgiveness. I was only in the love. That's all. So teach only love, for that is what you are. But his apostles, he's saying, did not fully understand it. And they ended up distorting the message. So here's what else he says. These are some of the examples of upside down thinking in the New Testament. He actually mentions the New Testament by name, although its gospel is really only the message of love. If the apostles had not felt guilty, they never could have quoted me as saying, quote, I come not to bring peace, but a sword. This is clearly the opposite of everything I taught. Nor could they have described my reactions to Judas as they did if they had really understood me. I could not have said, betrayest thou the Son of Man with a kiss, unless I believed in betrayal. The whole message of the crucifixion was simply that I did not. The, quote, punishment I was said to have called forth upon Judas was a similar mistake. Judas was my brother and a son of God, as much a part of the sonship as myself. Was it likely that I would condemn him when I was ready to demonstrate that condemnation is impossible? And there is a Gospel of Judas, by the way, that was published in 2006. I think it was found in the 80s. It's a fascinating gospel. I was I haven't read it. I've listened to podcasts and videos about it. But in those, Judas is made out to be the good guy, not the bad guy. He's like, Judas was the one that helped to bring the salvation. That he played a very important role. Okay, so going on. As you read the teachings of the apostles, remember that I told them myself that there was much they would understand later. This is in the Gospel of John. Jesus said this in the Gospel of John. There's much that they would understand later because they were not wholly ready to follow me at the time. I do not want you to allow any fear to enter into the thought system toward which I am guiding you. I do not call for martyrs, but for teachers. So this is a very important line. This is not a path of martyrdom. This is not a path of dying in Jesus' name. This is not a path of trying to convert others to your faith. This is not a path of showing other people how holy you are. On the opposite is true. What you want to show people is how holy we all are. Everyone is holy, equally holy.